Hi everyone, this is Miss Griffith once again, and I'm here today with a reading lesson. This reading lesson is going to start with me reading a book, and then in the second half, I am going to go over a strategy that will help us to determine what lesson was in the text. The book I'm going to read is Mind Your Manners, and it says that this is a Jakers text. Mind Your Manners. It says it's adapted by Tom Mason and Dan Danko. Images by Antara Limited. Hello there. I'm Grandpa Pigley. Gather round and I'll tell you a story about when I was growing up down on Raloo Farm. Jakers, what fun we used to have. On a warm, bright day on Raloo Farm, Pigley and his friends Dannon and Fernie saw Pigley's dad and Mr. McGondry at the barn. Mr. McGondry's going to use our barn for a fancy dinner party on Saturday, Mr. Winks said. A dinner party? Dannon exclaimed excitedly. With cloth napkins and 2 forks? And fancy ties and tight shoes? Fernie wondered. And on a Saturday? Asked Pigley. Pigley and Fernie were not quite as happy as Dannon about the party. Mr. McGondry announced, I want everyone to meet my brother. He's the Irish ambassador to Denmark. Dannon clapped her hands together. Ooh, I'm part Danish, Mr. McGondry. You're welcome to come to the party, Mr. McGondry said to the children, but you must behave properly. Dannon promised they would. I'm sure of it, she said. So they could be ready for the party, Pigley, Fernie, and Dannon stayed after school the next day to take a special manners class from Mr. McGondry. Miss Nanny, the shopkeeper, was also there to lend a helping hand. Mr. McGondry started the lesson by pulling out a chair politely for Miss Nanny. This is the proper way to pull a chair out for a lady, he said. Pigley and Fernie tried to pull the chair out for Dannon, but Pigley wouldn't let go, and neither would Fernie. The chair almost hit Dannon. Mr. McGondry was very disappointed in both boys. Perhaps we should move along to tea time. Mr. McGondry sighed. Now what shall I do it? Mr. McGondry raised his teacup and gently sipped his tea. Delicious, he said. Now, let's all give it a go, shall we? Dannon, Pigley, and Fernie raised their teacups. Fernie tried to take a small sip, but made a loud slurping noise by mistake. Good one, Pigley laughed. He slurped his tea even louder than Fernie. That made Fernie giggle. He tried to beat Pigley by slurping his tea again, this time much louder. They both laughed, then realized that Miss Nanny and Mr. McGondry were not happy. Miss Nanny said, You know, children, slurping is not polite, and when you're not polite, you should apologize. Pigley and Fernie nodded in agreement and went to their desk. Each desk was set with a plate, a glass, 2 forks, a knife, and 2 spoons. Good table manners include knowing which fork or spoon to use, Miss Nanny said. Pigley playfully slapped his hand against his spoon. It shot into the air and bounced off Miss Nanny's head. Mr. McGondry had seen enough. That's enough. Children will not be invited to my party after all. Dannon was so very disappointed. No party? That was not good at all. Danon's sad because she didn't get invited to the party. Her grandmother even made her a brand new dress. She told me you boys weren't very polite in manners class. Piggly and Fernie looked at each other. No, I guess we weren't very polite, Piggly, Fernie said. I know. Piggly thought for a moment, then started walking towards home. Remember what Miss Nanny said to do when you're not polite? At the barn, Mr. McGondry was getting ready for the party when Piggly and Fernie came in. Hello, Mr. McGondry. Piggly politely shook Mr. McGondry's hand. We'd like to apologize for what we did in manners class. We're very sorry we behaved so badly, Fernie added. Well now, Mr. McGondry said suspiciously, are you hoping that I'll invite you to my party again? Piggly shook his head. Not us, sir. We were hoping you could invite our friend Danon. She really wanted to come to your party, Fernie said, but we messed it up for her, Piggly exclaimed. We're sorry, Fernie said. We're sorry in a very big way, Piggly added. Impressed by their apology, Mr. McGondry said that Danon could come to the party after all. But on one condition, he added, that the two of you also come and remain on your best behavior. Yes, sir, Piggly said. It'll be a pleasure, sir, Fernie agreed. And the boys ran off to tell Danon the good news. They had a party to attend. By the time Piggly and Fernie got Danon and they all changed their clothes, the party had already started. The barn was full of people and music. Piggly stopped at the front door. Please, after you, he said politely. Danon thanked Piggly, but said the polite thing to do would be to go in together. And that's exactly what all three friends did. Now, that is the end of the story, Mind Your Manners. Now, if you are in second grade right now, you are most likely working on recounting or retelling stories and determining their central message, lesson, or moral. This story does have a lesson, and I'm going to show you one strategy that can be used to help pull that lesson out of the text. Mistakes can lead to lessons. This is a strategy that comes from a text, and the text is Jennifer Saravallo, Reading Strategies. Mistakes can lead to lessons. So when a character makes a mistake in a text, you can often use that mistake to help you determine what the lesson is in the text. So first, the title. The title is simple, Mind Your Manners. Okay, so first I wrote down the title, Mind Your Manners. Now the character's mistake. Now the characters in the book were Danon, Piggly, and Fernie. Piggly and Fernie were not acting polite, and they got all three characters kicked out of the party. That was a mistake that Piggly and Fernie made. Okay, so for the character's mistake, I wrote Piggly and Fernie were not polite and got all three kicked out of the party. So I'm going to take that mistake, and from that mistake, I'm going to let it drive the possible lessons. One possible lesson in this text would be always mind your manners. I think as a reader that if Piggly and Fernie had minded their manners from the beginning of the story, they may not have gotten kicked out. So that is one possible lesson. And one more possible lesson is, or could be, saying sorry goes a long way. After the characters in the text made a mistake and they were not acting politely, they said sorry, and because they said sorry, they were invited to come to the party once again. I read a text. I then used the strategy that mistakes can lead to lessons to help pull the lessons or possible lessons out of the story. Thanks for watching. Bye.